are listening to the Mountainside Podcast, and our guest for this episode is my good friend, second-degree black belt and professor Dave Roberts from Brazilian Top Team Colorado. I've known Dave for quite some time, long before I started this podcast. It was great to finally have him in here as a guest. Dave is an outstanding person doing some amazing things in and outside of his jiu-jitsu gym, and I hope you enjoy our conversation. Got me on the spot.
Is that another sponsor on your head?
There's some guys that I've been working with. I had them on the podcast, and it was pretty cool. They do some pretty wild shit, man. Their Virkin Group they're bringing a military aspect to like the hunting world. So they're making this device right now that's for your phone. So your phone will clip to your chest on like a bino rig. Mm-hmm. So like a lot of guys use their phones now to hunt. Like there's all these apps and stuff that they have like Onyx, and I have a Garmin watch that tracks like where you're at GPS wise, and you can mark waypoints and stuff. But it's always a pain in the ass to like pull your phone out, or maybe it's going to drop.
Oh, for sure.
So this is a thing that like hooks to your chest and it flips down, and it's a hard deal. So you can look at your phone and do it, or maybe your bow's in your hand.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah, pretty badass.
That is cool.
And they hooked me up with this hat, and just cool guys. John Lakeman, we had him on the podcast, and he's so heavily involved, I couldn't reveal his identity. So we did like the blurred face and the whole, like no video, but just good friends to have. Fucking cool people, man. I'm so grateful that we have people like that in this country protecting us.
Oh, for sure.
It's wild. But anyways, Dave, we just dove right into it. I'm super happy to have you here, dude.
Oh, I'm excited to be here. First podcast too.
Yeah.
So
popping the cherry.
Yep.
I've been asking you for like 2 years, and we're finally put it together. So like, I enjoy everybody that comes in here, but like I count you as one of my friends, like a close friend, you know?
Oh, for sure. We go way back.
Yeah. And in the community. And yeah, I always enjoy having my friends in, because it's just like easy, you know? Like it's way easier. Like I don't have any nerves because it's not a scientist sitting across from me or a biologist. I mean,
no, it's just two buddies talking, right?
I'm kind of a big dumb guy, as you know. So it's like sometimes I sound stupid when I'm asking questions, but yeah, dude, I'm super stoked to have you in here, because as long as I've known you, we've always hung out like in the gym. We've always had kids around, or mm-hmm. maybe it was at a bar or something. Mm-hmm. And this is like an uninterrupted conversation. Like, when have you or I ever been in the same room where there's not a ton of people around?
Right, and distractions and all that.
Right.
Yeah. No, first time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
and then it's crazy.
I'm glad that you're doing it here, man.
Oh, for sure. It's crazy to think it's been 2 years, because a lot's gone on in 2 years.
Oh, man, yeah. I think, Gabby, you might have to look back. I think we're older than 2 years now. I think we're going on.
Well,
let's see. We're a little. If you go back to like episode 1 and look at the date, there should be a date of when we.
That's right, because you started this long after.
It was like right after the pandemic. You actually might need to go to Spotify. If you click the little Spotify logo down there at the bottom, it should tell you. It's at the very bottom of the bar.
What am I missing?
The navigation bar at the very bottom.
Oh, way down here.
Not on the website. Like see all the apps down there on the Apple bar?
Oh, what, like here?
No, go all the way to the bottom of the screen. Keep going down. See the
okay.
Spotify logo? Yeah, click that. And then, we're going to reveal my Spotify, all the fucked up shit I listen to. Oh, it's not that bad. If you go back to your library, or there's the Mountainside right there, just click on, yeah, that was our Christmas special. So if you scroll down, it should tell you a date. Yeah, so
wow.
March of 2020. So yeah.
And then you and I have known each other well before that.
Yeah. I mean, my kids were tiny when I brought them in.
Oh, sure.
You know, and now they're in some of them are in middle school, and that's wild.
That's wild.
Yeah, it was kind of cool. I was, I grew up wrestling, and I never really I always respected jiu-jitsu because I started watching like the UFC like way back when it was like kind of barroom brawls. Like I think I saw the first one from like a Blockbuster video and that we stole from, you know, one of my buddy's dads or something had it. And like watching that for the first time was incredible, and watching like Hoist Gracie, but nobody knew what jiu-jitsu was really like back then. And then I was kind of looking for something to get the kids into once we moved back to Evergreen. And you guys had just started up your business kind of around the same time. And two of my kids were in Taekwondo. But it was like all the Taekwondo gyms that they went to, it was really just kind of a racket almost. Like, I hate to say it that way. Like, yeah, they were learning some stuff, some striking skills and stuff. But there was kids in there that were like 9, 10 years old, and they had black belts, and they couldn't fight their way out of a paper bag, dude. You know what I mean? So it's like, it was almost like a money like scheme type thing where it's like every 3 months we had to pay for a new belt, and then there was new gis associated with the belt, and then it was like all this different bullshit, you know?
Yeah.
And I knew jiu-jitsu was a bit more wrestling based, you know, but I never really put it in perspective until I stumbled into your guys' gym, because I was just so fed up with the Taekwondo shit that was going on. I was like, no, we're going to go get some real like MMA training, like something,
sure.
a life skill. Like,
Yeah.
fuck the belts and all that bullshit anymore. Like, let's go get you a real skill. If I'm going to invest the money and the time, and we stumbled across you guys, and I think you were just opening your business up here. And
Was it in that small location?
it was like a little strip mall. It was like
So-
the first one that you guys
Yeah.
were in. And
So
I
that
think
would have been 4 years ago.
wow.
Yeah. Because we've been open the new spot 1 year, 3 years at the last spot, and then the original spot we were there 9 months.
Wow.
So it's
That was all? It was 9
Yeah,
months?
9 months.
Yeah, I think when we came in, like the mats had just been put down.
Oh, so
And
you-
like the heavy bags weren't even up or anything.
that's right. We
Yeah.
just had those green poles. Do you remember those? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So you're talking 4 to 5 years. Wow.
So that's pretty wild. And the moment I met you, like I stumbled in, it was kind of like off hours, and it was cool because it was just me and you there. And I feel like we instantly became friends, just bullshitting about what I was looking for. And then you kind of schooling me on the jiu-jitsu side of stuff. Like, I mean, being a UFC fan, I watched it, but you don't know shit until you actually get on the mat and start learning
Right.
yourself, right? And I think watching my kids roll, and then you guys inviting me on the mat, I was like, this is fucking great, because it turned into like a family thing, right? Like,
Oh,
it's something the
absolutely.
whole family can do. Everybody can benefit from it. And I think one of the biggest things that stood out to me, it was like the first 4 weeks that my kids were taking jiu-jitsu. I think they were still white belts. There might have been a stripe on there or something, but they didn't know a whole lot, right?
Right.
But you guys were teaching them the basics. And I was at a class, my daughter was in the class, and I was just sitting there waiting for her to get out. And you guys invited the parents on the mat,
Oh, okay.
and you made us all get on our knees, and then our kids take our backs and put us in the choke. And we had to tap, you know? Like, it was amazing to me that a kid could, not that you couldn't flip that kid and throw him against the wall, but just the fact that their arms are big enough to still get a choke and make you tap.
It goes back to technique, right?
Yeah.
And that's what's great about it is you can take a 5, 6, 7-year-old and teach them proper technique, and it's like if you lock it in correctly, it's gonna work.
Yeah.
You
And
know?
it does too. Like, I remember, oh shit, okay, yeah. I better tap real quick. And the kids love it too, right? Because
for sure.
they're getting after their parents.
So there's some stories. What's great is, we have a few teenage girls too. And you get these grown men that come in, and just happened a couple weeks ago where I'm doing personal training with this daughter and this her father. And then so what we do is after a little bit of training, like I'll go in and roll with the dad, and then one of the 16-year-olds will come in and roll with the daughter, and then we finally switched it up. And then our 16-year-old that's been doing it for a few years rolls with this grown man, and next thing you know, he's just like, after he's blown away, he's like, I couldn't do anything. The 16-year-olds put me in chokes and put me in arm bars, and I'm just like, and I'm like, well, now you truly appreciate jiu-jitsu when you get in that position,
Right.
Yeah,
and size doesn't really matter. If it's all about skill and technique, right? Like,
It
and I
is.
learned that the hard way with you guys on the mat, like it was very humbling to have, shout out to some of the guys that were coming in, like Dr. Castro and some of those guys that I think he's maybe like 5'10", 5'11" or something. And I'm 6'4". I probably had at least 120 pounds on him at that point.
yeah.
But he would fuck me up, man. I think he tapped me out more times than not. And it's funny now that he's my doctor, because I'm like, yeah, my doctor's choked me before. And
For
it's
sure.
kind of funny.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it was awesome. And I can't wait to get back in there. I'm glad that you're opening up some stuff for me to come in
Starting
at
Tuesday.
kind of my schedule. And it's going to be very humbling coming back, because I've taken a long break.
Yeah,
Long break.
but you'll get it back pretty quick,
Yeah. I'm going to try to remember some stuff.
So I got, and it's working out perfect because I got this family and it worked out. Like I said, sometimes you start a program and nobody's interested, and it's almost like, it takes a minute to get it going, and then sometimes it doesn't get going, and you're like, am I wasting my time? But in this case, I have you and I have a few other people that are already interested, and I think it's going to be one of the better classes, especially for this area. Everybody works from home. So it's like, how many people, it's like I get done with work, it's too late or it's too early. And then right in the middle, it's like, I'm going to take a break, I'm going to let it all out, and then I'm going to get right back to
That's
work.
my favorite thing, is to work out on a lunch break.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm super pumped that you guys are adding that, because I'll be there as much as I can.
Oh, for sure.
For
I am
sure,
too,
if I'm in
yeah.
town. But yeah, they, I guess starting off, if you're somebody that's just starting off in jiu-jitsu, like, where do you guys kind of baseline that, and to get people that are interested? Because I know that it can be very overwhelming, right? And there's a lot, you got a lot of eyes on you and that sort of thing. So I think a lot of people are apprehensive to even try it, right? Like, it's intimidating to walk into a gym.
Sure.
And you, even as open as you guys are and as nice as the whole team is there and everything, it can be a bit intimidating. So what are something, if some of our listeners have always wanted to get into something like this, or some sort of mixed martial arts, whether it's Muay Thai or something like that, that'll help them walk through that door so they have a little bit of knowledge when they go in, and they kind of have some confidence behind, like something we can tell them over the mic.
Yeah, so I mean, that's tough. Over the years of training, I kind of developed my own, in a sense, system of making people feel comfortable, and fundamentals is what it's all about. I think the biggest mistake people make when starting off is they jump on YouTube. And I hate YouTube, because if you're starting off, it's okay if you've been in it for years, and like I can look at a new move and check it out, because my body knows how to move, right? It knows how to look at a move and go, okay, that makes sense. But then you get people, they don't know where to start, right? So
Right,
some
you
people
got people their first week trying to rubber guard or something.
Yeah, well, I saw this on, they come in, and we got a guy that's very talented, very talented. He just has to learn the fundamentals, but he's coming in doing all this fancy stuff, and he's going up against guys with the fundamentals. It's like, that would work if you knew the fundamentals, you knew how to roll first, how to get into that move. You see a move on YouTube and you try to jump into it, you're either going to hurt yourself or hurt somebody else. So the biggest thing is just, it's tough to say, but they just got to walk in. They got to be honest. They got to walk in and ask questions and just be comfortable saying, I don't know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Well,
honesty is key, because as soon as you hop on the mat, there's no, you can't bullshit.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
And then, if you're rolling with somebody and you're uncomfortable, then I tell people all the time, I have to remind all my students, new and old, and say, listen, hey, we got some new people in here. work with them.
The camaraderie that's in a jiu-jitsu gym, though, that I found, and especially at your guys' place, is super cool. Like, a lot of those guys that we rolled with at 6 a.m. back in the day, I'm still in touch with 90%
for sure.
of them. You
Yeah.
know, it's like, and they're there to help you out. And there was times where I'd go in and like, hey, my elbow's a little bit fucked up, so take it easy on this arm, or
Yeah.
whatever.
Oh,
And
absolutely.
it's not like you're going to go in there and get your ass kicked the first minute you walk in. And I think you guys are really good about that. I think even when I started, it was like, hey, this is just a house rule, but you're not going to roll. We'll drill, but you're not going to roll for the first, I can't remember how long it was. It was like 10 days or
So
something.
I give it a couple weeks.
Yeah.
But even then, it's like you get some guys that come in and they want to roll. So
Especially if they have a wrestling background or something,
sure,
right?
sure,
They can
that's different.
step right in. Yeah.
that's totally different because you got to think, even if you're a wrestler, that's mat time. Whether it's wrestling, judo, jiu-jitsu, it's mat time. So if you come in and you say, hey, I wrestled in high school, then, that's, to me, that tells me that you can control yourself on the mat. So why not? And then that's some of the best times for my older guys because they might not have done any wrestling. And then here comes
They're
this
throwing
guy.
all kinds of shit at you, right?
And then you get this new guy comes in, even a collegiate wrestler comes in and he goes 100, like he could have been out of wrestling 4 years. He steps on that mat, it comes back to him. And then you can't do that necessarily in a jiu-jitsu match because now they're like all over this guy, blue belt maybe in jiu-jitsu. And then next thing you know, my
Just
blue belt's
think
just
about
like,
some of the savages that we know, like firsthand, like RJ Haynes or
oh, for sure.
Luke Burrier. Those guys are monsters.
Yeah.
And
that's
they're pushing my age, 40, and they're in their 40s, I think. I don't know how
yeah,
old
40s.
Luke is.
I'm sure. I think
know
they're all in
RJ's
their
a little,
40s.
yeah.
Yeah.
'Cause and I wouldn't want to mess with either of those dudes.
Oh,
honestly,
no.
but you would never have to because they're just good people, right?
Well, that's it. And that goes back to like the whole thing of jiu-jitsu and wrestling and boxing. And those, you really develop a discipline, self discipline, where it's like you don't have anything to prove. That's like with our kids. I encourage all our kids. Our kids, I tell them, I say, listen, your first match, don't expect to win, but go out and give 100%. That's what we're looking for. Listen to your coach and try your best. And I tell the parents, I said, you watch, mark my words, you're going to see a difference from Saturday, the tournament, to Sunday every time. It changes them. It changes their mind. It changes the way they roll. They change their goals in life, everything. Because you're not on a team sport, even though we're a family, right? You're out. It's just you. One of the biggest fears in life is standing toe to toe with somebody. Yeah. And jiu-jitsu tournaments are fights without punches. That's it. I mean, it is not. There's nothing easy about it. And you take a kid that is. I've taken kids that are shy and, they're scared of life, and they step on that mat, and then come Monday, they're a whole different attitude. Like, I want this.
Confidence.
I want to
right?
be the best at this. I can do it. How many kids, again, out of our kids, where they're scared to step on that mat, and then they come off that mat, and you just see them like, totally different person, and it's amazing. What it does to the chemistry
even
of
to
the mind,
adults, it's
everything.
the same feeling. I mean, I wish I would have got involved with it long before I actually did, with you guys. I wish I would have picked it up a little bit earlier. I just don't think it was readily available as it is now.
Oh,
it's
yeah.
crazy how many gyms there are.
Well, it's at one time it was one of the fastest growing sports in the world. And obviously soccer is probably number one, but just the whole, like, the way they developed it, the Gracies, the way they developed it is a reason why it's expanding. Their whole belt system, from what every belt means, white to blue fundamentals, blue to purple. It's basically you're a fighter. You're training to be a fighter. You get the brown belt. You're training to become a professor. You become a black belt. And that's why when you become a black belt, the system is to teach, So it makes sense if you follow that.
And that almost makes you, I like teaching something that you have knowledge in almost makes you better on the mat. I would
It
think,
does.
right?
Oh,
At that
absolutely.
Point? Yeah.
When I started teaching, and this was years ago, just helping out, really helped my everything. Just the knowledge and retaining it, you know? So
yeah, it's super important. I think one of the biggest things that I really enjoy, I was just talking about Taekwondo and their belt system, and you brought up the belt system a few minutes ago, is it's not like this rapid progression. Like you can't become a black belt in like just a couple years, right? Like you're talking like almost a decade, right? Like you're talking like 10 years probably.
Yeah, you get them quicker now. It feels like you get them quicker now than you did in a sense back in the day. But there was no real system involved. Like when I started back in the 90s, there was no IBJJF. And if there was, it was just starting. You know, there was no system to follow. Every professor had their own way of doing things.
Right.
And it wasn't hard to be a 10-year blue belt, you know. But now it's like you have the system of attendance you have, which is, I call it mat time. Then you have, you know, your test and knowledge. And even in the kids, you get the stripes, which is cool. And it's amazing to see a piece of tape around the belt just does something to the kid and their excitement. Yeah. But we run a test maybe twice a year, but that's not for every kid. You know, one kid may test once a year, but he's getting those stripes throughout, which shows progression, and they know that, you know. But you're right, though. The whole Taekwondo thing is,
I think it teaches hard work, though, right? Like not getting something that fast, because like to compare it to Taekwondo, and maybe I was going to the wrong spots, right? But like that belt progression was so fast. It was like I think it was every like 2 months, right? So every 60 days, they were testing for a new belt. And then it was like Stripe City, man. Like you show up for a class, you're getting a stripe almost. It was ridiculous.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. We get that a lot. We get people that come from Taekwondo schools around the town, and you're paying like a membership. You figure at least $160 a month, and their argument was every 6 weeks there was a belt test. Right. And they're like, well, if you do that, you're basically paying 18 months of membership I mean, that's like what, almost 3,000 plus a year for that, you know? And it's like, even parents can kind of see it like.
But then it's like kind of, and I'm not saying that's bad. I'm not knocking Taekwondo. I think it's a studied art. There's a ton of different, there's judo, there's so many different arts, right? And to be a mixed martial artist, I think the best thing to do is study all of that, like Muay Thai or, you know, have a little bit of that background, right? And it's proven in the UFC or at the professional level. But let's face it, not all these kids are after that, right? Like they want to go do something that's cool. And I get the Taekwondo, right? It's like that's the Hollywood.
Sure.
You know, karate and Taekwondo are the Hollywood martial arts, right?
Let's think back to the 80s. Yeah. I don't know about you, but every time I saw Karate Kid, I bought a book and I did katas in the living room, walking around the house kicking and stuff like that.
I think maybe my first fist fight or an altercation as a kid, I think I tried a crane kick or something and totally got punched in the mouth or something, right. You know, like it was stupid. But yeah, I was always into the bad guys on that. So have you watched the Cobra Kai? Thing, the new.
Excuse me.
There's some water there for you too, if you need water, bro.
Thank you. You know, I saw it when it was free on YouTube. Okay. Right, the first 2 seasons, I think. Okay. And then it's funny because my brother, I'll go back and help my brother work a few times a year, and then him and I will talk about it, and then he's kind of like, tell me each season and tell me who comes back, and I'm like, all right, I gotta get Netflix and just binge watch.
Sweep the leg, Johnny. That was like my favorite part, you know.
Oh,
like,
sure.
Just like when they were all dressed as skeletons going to the Halloween party or the dance or whatever. I was like, those guys are cool. But yeah, no. So growing up in the 80s and stuff, right? Like that was the only relationship that I had to like any sort of martial arts, I guess. I mean, I had a wrestling background, but nothing like super extensive.
Oh, right.
Yeah. Like I wrestled a little bit in middle school and then a few years in high school, and that was really about it. And that was awesome. That was very humbling, as much as jiu-jitsu is, I think. But yeah, going back to that like belt progression, I just think it's so good the way that jiu-jitsu is structured and how you guys approach it in some other gyms. It just teaches work ethic, right?
It does.
Because
it does, yeah.
you're not expecting to get something, right? It's just like, no, you're going through the fundamentals. You're going through hard work. You're going to go through some suffering, some humiliation. I mean, all that stuff is left on the mat.
Yeah.
And then, so when you do get something, it's almost like you appreciate it more, right?
Yeah.
It's like the person that has everything, right? Like you give them a gift, but if it's a one of a kind gift, like some of the stuff that I cherish in here the most are like, my buddy Donnie Dust made me these, handmade stone tools. He's like a primitive survival guy, right? And those are so cool. Like, cause you can't replicate that. You can't go buy it. Or like these challenge coins that we get, is super cool too. Like from some of the military people that we've had in, or law enforcement, or whatever it is,
great, yeah.
like those things are pretty awesome. Cause it's like it's something you can't obtain without some sort of respect or hard work or
for sure.
whatever, right?
You know what they say, the faster you make it, the faster you lose it, right? Whether it's money
Mm-hmm.
or skills or anything else, if you try the fast, I want to go through college as fast as I can. I want to get that certificate so I can move on. You just kind of wasting your time. Same thing with money. There's been times where it's like you make money super fast and it's like tomorrow it's gone. Like what happened to it?
Right.
But when you earn it over time, you retain it for one, and then you appreciate it, like you said, because it's a lot of hard work. Going back to the kids, you teach these kids these techniques, and even something as little as a scissor sweep, and they're messing it up, right? So I'll give you my daughter. She did a tournament, and she could have won the tournament.
How old is she now?
She'll be 7 in 2 weeks.
That's awesome.
That
So
is
at what
crazy.
age do they, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but at
No,
what
you're fine.
age do they start letting kids compete in tournaments?
Oh, I want to say as Grappling Industries might be as low as 4.
Really?
4, yeah.
That's badass.
Yeah, so she started competing. She actually competed at wrestling at 5, I think. And at that point, it's kind of fun because the kids just get out there, run around. And it's like they throw themselves on the ground, and
Right.
it's pretty fun. But yeah, so it give you an example with her. It's like, we talked, and it's like you could have won, but your technique was off,
Mm-hmm.
and then all we did, we drilled the whole class, and we drilled it. And my philosophy is if one person needs to do it, they all need to do it. And we drilled it and drilled it and drilled it. And we actually won gold our very next tournament because of if they got taken down, they were getting on top from a scissor sweep. Or we drill them to attack. There's no like, don't circle around. You get that fight to the ground,
Right.
And that's all they know. And then the problem is if that didn't work for them and they ended up on their back, then it's like, we're going to lose on points. But then they learn that scissor sweep perfectly, and it's like, And then to them, not only did they feel the progression, they felt the win, they felt that they pull it off perfectly. You know what I mean? So like going back to what you said, there's so much that goes into it that just develops a child's mind from confidence to the ability to learn, right? It says, okay, if I want to learn something, I can. Nothing's going to stop me,
Mm-hmm.
And even wrestling, every kid has a natural tendency to want to wrestle. We all see it. And that's why I think jiu-jitsu is like right up that alley. And then when they see the progression of, they come in, they're new, they get beat up on the mat, and then they get better and better and better. And then like usually right around 12, 13 years old, I'm teaching these kids how to teach and help other younger kids. So there's a whole big thing that goes into play in the development of a child, from their mind to life skills, and to be able to protect themselves, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I was just telling my daughter, cause she trains ballet like basically 7 days a week, morning, sometimes night, most of the time. So I was like, hey, and she loved going to jiu-jitsu. She loved coming in and taking class with you and the other kids and and Missy and all that. And so I'd love to get her back, but I was telling her, and I think I told you this right before the podcast, or I was telling Gabby maybe, but I was like, yeah, so Dave's starting another class, and I think that you could maybe go to it in the afternoons before ballet, maybe.
Yeah.
And she got all excited, and she's like, well, yeah, when am I going to have time? And I said, well, it won't interrupt any of your ballet, right?
Oh, sure.
Because she's got a ton of obligations there. And I told her, and besides, you're getting a little bit older now. If you ever want to go on a date with a boy, you're going to have to be a purple belt.
That's awesome.
Because I really think, like, from a self-defense standpoint, jiu-jitsu's one of the most effective things that you can learn, especially if you're a young woman and you're in a rape situation, because how much do you learn on your back to get out of that situation?
Yeah. Yeah.
Not that people are in there trying to rape you. I don't want this to come off the wrong way, but jiu-jitsu, if you've never taken it or don't know anything about it, it's super close, and a lot of it's on the ground where you're on your back. So,
oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
You're not going to teach, and even in my women's self-defense, I teach them. I tell them, you can learn how to box, but seriously, you're not, if you're in a self-defense situation, your hands aren't taped, all you're going to do is piss off a guy, right? You punch him, you're going to piss him off, you're going to end up on the ground anyway. Muay Thai for stand-up is probably your best bet. Knees, elbows. You take a woman, teach her how to throw a good elbow, that's a little bit different, right? Knees, even a little bit of kicks. But at the end of the day, they talk about fights. 85% or more of fights end up on the ground, right? So whether it's a fight, a rape situation, you're getting mugged, whatever. And I tell people all the time, the few times in life that I've had to use jiu-jitsu in real life, it's happened quick, like super quick. I'm talking about seconds. Guy comes up, goes to throw a punch, double leg to the ground. Or guy comes up, I feel threatened. He's wearing a jacket, cross collar, choke. By the time I even cinch that thing up,
somebody's wearing a leather jacket.
He's falling to the ground.
That's worse than a gi top.
Yeah. Oh, it is, right? But what's funny is when you choke them out and they come to, and then you're like, oh, crap, and you got to choke them out again,
Oh, right.
And then they flop around like a fish. But anyway.
Besides that, too, the best part about that is when the police show up, if you haven't thrown a strike or a punch at somebody, it's not assault. You're just defending yourself at that point,
exactly.
right?
Yeah.
Especially if you're telling somebody to stop.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, exactly. Yeah, it's not.
So it's not like, I'm sure that you could get in some sort of trouble with the wrong situation or something, right? And yeah, but I think it's the most effective way.
Oh,
and
absolutely.
especially as a female,
Yeah.
right? In that situation.
Exactly. And why would they still be there too? Right?
Right.
If I'm a female and I can take somebody out, I'm not going to stick around. I tell them all the time, hey, if this happens, leave this. You leave.
Yeah.
Why am I going to stick around?
Get
Wait
the
for this
hell
guy
out
to-
of the situation,
Yeah.
right?
You take care of yourself and then you get out of there, you
Yeah.
know?
We've even talked about that with some like firearms instructors that we've had in from a tactical standpoint. And even, some of the military people that I've talked to in the past, it's like, number one is be prepared for a situation, have a plan. But number two is like, don't be stupid. Like, don't hang out. Like, get the hell out of the situation. If you can diffuse the situation by going away from it, that's the best thing that you can do. But if push comes to shove and you're in that, tight situation, then at least you have some sort of skill or some sort of self-defense, whether it's a firearm or mixed martial arts or jiu-jitsu or whatever, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
I think that applies across the board. Yeah, no, I think, if my daughter wants to go on a date, that's the stipulation,
Well, the good thing about that class too that we're starting, there's already 2 women involved.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so
Awesome.
we have Coach Missy that's going to be there, and then we have another female that's going to be in there, and then who knows? We'll probably get more in there. We're also starting a ladies' night, Wednesday ladies' night, in our Conifer location, which is cool because again, Coach Missy's going to be there, and then she last time
that's not for the dudes to show up and pick up chicks,
well,
right?
It's funny. It's funny because. To answer your question,
most ladies'
not, right?
nights that I know about are for that, but
But sometimes it's funny too because we just got to get them on the mat. And then I think one of our benefits to really developing or having so many women in our program is the fact that I do have a female coach that can be there to make them comfortable.
Oh, that's super
and to
important.
show them things here and there. And then after, a little bit, then, I mean, again, you have a lot of the younger girls, they start learning this technique, and then they look around, they're like, you know what? I think I might want to try it out on a guy. And then go out there, and next thing you know, they're sweeping them, putting them in arm bars. And it's like, again.
They have confidence then, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
So.
Wow. It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome. How did you get into all this, man? Like, let's do a deep dive back, because that was one of the things I was most excited about tonight. Like I was saying at the beginning of the podcast, you and I don't get to hang out like this. And I know you have a crazy background where you but let's just go back to the very beginning, because I got little tidbits of it, right? And I know you fought at a professional level, and just how you got into all this. And maybe let's start with where you grew up. I don't even know if I know where you're from originally. You probably told me, but.
So originally Jacksonville, Florida.
That's right.
But
okay.
My dad was military, and so we moved around a lot. So I went from Florida to Hawaii to Illinois to Maine to Tennessee. And then Tennessee was kind of where I say I grew up, because it was 8th grade through, high school. And that's kind of like when I think of growing up, that's kind of like it. But Maine was probably the next place where I kind of grew up. And that was in the 80s, right? So that was where it was like, we watched the shows. There was that Main Street Karate Studio that I never got to sign up. My mom wouldn't let me sign up for it. Yeah.
Thought it was too dangerous, or?
Yeah. Well, no, I don't know. I don't remember what the excuse was, right? And then I know my dad wanted to teach us how to fight. He boxed, he wrestled, he did all that. So, but I think my mom was just like totally against all that. And the joke was how throughout the career, my dad's like, now, can you imagine how better they would be if I was able to train them at a young age?
Yeah. Like if you had some sort of boxing training or mixed martial arts training or something like that.
Starting off early. But so this is 2023. This is my 30th year of training mixed martial arts.
Really?
Yep.
That's wild, man.
In 93 is when I started my wrestling. I started kind of in 92 as a recreational wrestling, just to kind of get my feet wet. And then when we moved to Tennessee, that's where I started my wrestling. And then shortly after, like anybody, UFC 3 came out. I remember my brother's buddy was like, oh, you guys got to see this. And I think that's where, obviously Hoist Gracie and Ken Shamrock was fighting, and a few other guys were fighting.
So wild.
And when I saw that, I never had in my mind that that's what I wanted to do, that I want to be a fighter. I knew that I wanted to learn it all. So I think it was either my sophomore or junior year, they had do you remember the Gracie affiliations all over the country?
Yeah.
And Hoist would go around and do seminars.
I never really got into it at a young age, but now that I've been into it, there's Gracie gyms fucking everywhere.
Yep.
Yeah.
And different affiliations of Gracie's, right? So I think they opened up Torrance in the early 80s or something like that.
Can you look that up, Gabby, when the first Gracie gym was opened?
In Torrance.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then, so anyway, they had an affiliation right there in Memphis. And there was a grappling tournament. And it was like, I had to wear the gi top. I had to wear all that. And then
so it was Memphis, Tennessee?
Memphis, Tennessee, yeah.
That's kind of a wild town, man.
Yeah.
A lot of crazy history, too.
Yeah. And it's different now, but back then it was awesome.
Yeah.
But we lived one county north, so we were kind of in the country, they say, especially out there. And I entered this tournament, and I got all the way to the finals. And I was frustrating the guy because I don't like the gi. I didn't like the guy. I never trained in the gi. I was a wrestler. And then so I would slip out of the gi top. And then I ended up losing by 1 point to the guy. with no jiu-jitsu
So
experience.
you had no jiu-jitsu training. You just
None.
went and bought a gi or something, or how'd you do?
Yep, just went out.
this competition?
It was a gi tournament, and I did it. And I'm like, all right, I'm going to test my skills. So I was smitting people with, head and arms,
Pinning them
different,
and shit.
pinning them, putting them in nothing. It was just basically taking wrestling moves and
chicken wing submission.
yeah, exactly. Put extra pressure on it, right? Feel like, okay, this guy, I'm pinning him, but now I gotta hurt him. How can I hurt him? And then afterwards, and the guy was a blue belt. And afterwards, we talked and we made a deal where if I would come train him in wrestling, he would train me in jiu-jitsu. So it was perfect. Plus, his instructor was he was a kickboxer. And Shotokan karate guy. So 2 days a week I would drive into Memphis and I'd get my jiu-jitsu in and my karate / kickboxing in, and so that started probably, you figure I started that in 94, 95. My wrestling started back in 93, and then it just all continued from there. Then in 1997,
That's wild. So this year it's 30 years. Then,
so it'd be 30 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's awesome, dude.
And then in 1997, I was walking on Beale Street, good old Beale Street, and there's a old, New Daisy Theater there. And they would put these, back then it was called shoot boxing. And they would wear the headgear and the gloves, and it was just, mixed martial arts. And you figured out I was 17 at the time. And I came back to my instructor and I said, I want to do this. I want to just try it. And of course, he's like, no. Let's give it a few more years and this. And I'm like, all right, well, I'm just going to do it anyway. So I end up doing it. And I win my first 3 fights, all when I'm 17, right? And I'm forging my father's signature on this.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I'm weighing in, and they're like, oh, well, can we get your parents' signature on this waiver? Oh, sure. Grab it, walk away, sign it, come back. So the funny thing is, so I go 3-0, and all 3 of those were like under like 1 round combined. And so I invite my dad out, and I'm in the ring, and they start announcing me, and they announce me as 3-0, and all this, and I go out and win my 4th fight super quick, and I come out and sit next to my dad, and he just looks over and goes, 3-0, huh? And I'm like, oh, crap.
Yeah, you're not pulling the one over on him then, huh?
Yeah.
Especially being a military guy, I'm sure.
For sure.
Yeah.
So for the longest time, the joke was like, I need a signature on something. He goes, well, why don't you sign it? I know you can sign it. So it was after my 5th fight, and that's when I got called up to the UFC.
Really?
Yeah, at the time.
So you did 5 fights in shooto boxing.
Yeah.
And you got called up to the UFC like that?
Yeah.
Wow.
Jeff Mullen was he was the judge for it. And my brother actually had fought. They were looking for a 185-pounder. So my brother fought in UFC 19.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And he did pretty well. He probably would have won, but I think the guy broke his nose and they couldn't stop the bleeding.
So was it still, because I feel like the first 30 or so were still kind of that, there wasn't weight classes and stuff at that point, right?
So
like that early?
There was. So in
because the first ones, I remember Hoist Gracie going against a sumo dude,
sure,
black sumo dude, and he was
yeah,
he had 200 pounds on him or something.
So they had just started. It was in that era where they started to play around with the rules. So they had just changed no striking to the back of the head, which technically, if you were to go back to my fight, right, I probably would have won by disqualification because his strikes right to the back of the head. Oh, but yeah, the weight classes were there. New rules were there. So yeah, a few changes.
Wow.
And
that's wild though, man. So you were 17 still? When
so
you got called
no.
Up,
so I got called up. I think I just turned 19.
Okay.
And then.
So you had gotten a couple more years of training in. I'm sure you were still training in between and all that.
Training the whole time.
Yeah.
And then after that, I've never gotten my ass beat that bad. So I basically wanted to quit. But on the airplane ride from Birmingham to Memphis, I was with these guys from Southern California, and they were super cool. And one of them was like, "Hey, man, look, you're young, you got talent. If this is something you really want to do, you got to come. You got to fly out and train with us." So he gave me his number. He's like, "Listen, if you take me up on my offer, you can sleep on my couch for a few weeks. I'm a painter. You can help me work." I mean, it was kind of like putting out on a silver platter, like, "Hey, if this is what you want, we're gonna make it happen for you."
So wait a minute, let's rewind. So you went and took your first UFC fight. What was that like walking into that situation from going from like?
So
Is this? Did I hear that right? Or
yeah,
okay,
yeah. So you figure 5 amateurs, but I was on top of the world. I'm like,
right.
here I am. I'm beating 26-year-old pro boxers. I'm beating all these grown men, and I'm like 17, 18.
Wow.
And I don't know what it was like to lose. Even my high school, like, junior, senior year, I didn't know what it was like to lose on the wrestling mat either. So it was like, in my mind, I was unstoppable.
Were you always a big guy?
No, I was 170.
Wow.
Yeah. So, anyway, so they trained me, and when they were training me, it was like, "Oh, this guy knows a little bit of ground. We're going to train, but we got to keep this to the feet." And I'm like, okay. So everything's fine and dandy until I get in there and they start making announcements. And
was it still, because right now it's a huge spectacle, right? Like the walkout music, the lights, the cage,
a lot
the
more
audience.
now, but even then, still same, right?
Just wild atmosphere, right?
Yeah. I mean, you feel the energy in that room.
And were you like in the same room, like warming up with other fighters? Did you have corner guys that went with you and the whole like coaches and stuff too?
Exactly. So we had the blue, you had blue corner, red corner, and then they had the mat in there. And when it was your turn, you warmed up. So same,
So there was some organization to it, because man, it seemed like a free for all.
Yeah, no, it was well organized.
Yeah.
It just wasn't the way it is now. There's so much money behind
It's so
it.
wild.
And even then, there was still a lot of money behind it. But as far as organization, it still ran the same way. As far as the walkout, the cut man, everything, it was still, it's not really as barbaric as people thought it was. It was at the beginning, right? Where
Because I'm sure it still had to be commissioned or something, right? Like I'm sure there was a commission involved.
It was. And there was only so many states that would,
And were they going to decisions at that point, or was it submission only?
It was rounds.
Okay.
So mine was three 5-minute rounds. And I think that was one of the big changes was they used to have the tournaments. They did away from the tournaments, time-wise, things like that, So they really kind of cleaned it up in a sense. But yeah, going back to that fight, you were asking, like, going into it, it was all fine. Walking out, again, on top of the world. And they announced me. Here I am, this 18, 19-year-old high school wrestling standout. I think they might even said something about Taekwondo or something. And then they announced this guy. When they announced this guy, I felt like I was standing there for 10 minutes while they were announcing his credentials. And even to this day, I can remember he's saying, he's a 26-year Jiu-Jitsu veteran. He was like a 5th degree in Jiu-Jitsu. Wow. And all I could do was look back at my guys. Look back at them, and they just looked at me and just threw their hands up like this, and I'm like, "You son of a," and then he was a world champion. They were naming all this stuff off, Pan Am champion, and here I am. I'm like, all this is going in my head, like, holy crap. What did you sign me up for? Right. And then of course So
you didn't know anything about who you were fighting before you got there?
No.
Yeah.
I listened to my coaches, you know what I mean? And again, it probably wouldn't have made a difference anyway, but to their defense, afterwards they're like, would you have taken the fight? And then that made me think, I'm like, you know what? It was an opportunity of a lifetime, because even though to me it was an embarrassment, it was a beatdown, it got me to where I was at today, So So yeah, it's
Learning lessons, right?
huge,
Yeah.
you know, and I kind of take that too because everything that I've done in my career, good or bad, there's a reason why why I went through it. I believe that now, which we'll go into later about the nonprofit. But because whether it's action good, action bad, knowledge good, knowledge bad, it all plays a part on how you can better somebody's life or better somebody else. You know what I mean?
Right.
Take your skills and don't waste them. You know what I mean? If I went through a very dark time, and I'm gonna take that and not waste it and put it towards something else to help somebody else. Does that make sense?
100%. Yeah.
So anyway, going back, so that was my. So I wanted to quit, and I went and got a job and did all this stuff, and I thought long and hard about it, but the passion was still there.
And you're riding back with these guys from that fight, and somebody offers you to move to California.
A free place to stay for a few weeks.
They needed somebody to train with, didn't they?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah. Actually, yeah, because when I got there, it was like, you know, they had members, but it was like they had a team, you know, and back then it was like there was, let's see, the Pat Miletich team. There was Tito Ortiz. I think that's when he was starting Team Punishment. There was not Shark Tank, Lion's Den. There was a
Tap out or something,
very
right?
very small amount of groups.
Right.
Yeah, Tap Out. I remember when Tap Out was one of my.
That was the shit, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Like back in, like that was the gear to have or whatever. Back
It was.
In the day.
In fact, in my first fight in California when I moved out there, they had opened up the door, drove their Cadillac in. There was one of those old Cadillacs, so it wasn't fancy. It was just big trunk. They popped it up, had their shirts hanging over, like truly starting this out of the trunk of a car. And I'm like walking, but didn't think anything about it at the time. These are pretty cool shirts. They're sponsoring everybody, and it blew up to be like a multi-million-dollar company.
It was wild.
Insane.
And then when it did, like I was living down in Southern California, and those were the people I avoided at the bar because I was like, for sure these guys want to fucking fight.
Oh,
right? Like,
yeah.
And they were selling Tap Out hats and shit to everybody, so you didn't know who had
Yeah,
skills
who
and
had
who
skill-
didn't,
yeah.
especially down there in Orange County or something.
Yeah.
man.
And then Affliction, remember Affliction came
Oh,
along?
right.
Oh,
right.
man.
Some
When-
wild shirts. I
they were-
never got into that style, but
So here was the thing. You like Tap Out, you can buy a shirt for $20 or they give it to you, right? So either way, everybody was affording it.
right.
Being a young fighter, you can't afford that. So they'd show up with boxes of shirts and jeans. And me and my training partner, you figure everybody around my size is basically same waist. You know what I mean?
Right.
Same size, same weight. So, you know, dang well, if I wasn't getting sponsored this like high-end clothing, I wouldn't have been able to afford it. So it's like if I'm wearing it and somebody else is wearing it, they're either sponsored and we know who they are, or they just got a lot of money and bought this and they don't have time to train. So it was a little bit different than the Tap Out.
My point was whether it was a trained fighter, actually the trained fighters probably didn't want to fight in a bar.
Well, you
but
don't.
like all those fucking assholes that would wear that shit at the bar and shit, I was like,
Yeah.
they all wanted to fight, especially once they got a little bit of tequila in them or whatever. You know? It
Oh,
was
for
like
sure. Yeah.
ridiculous, especially in
That's
the
like-
909ers is what I call them.
The
now.
night, yep. The country boys, right? That's pretty funny. And then the Tank Abbots.
Oh my god, I loved
What
watching
part of Southern
Tank Abbott
California?
fight. So when I moved into Hermosa Beach, and I never left the
Oh,
South Bay. So
okay.
I always lived in Hermosa for like the first 8 years, and then I think I lived for like 3 months. I moved to Torrance, which wasn't bad, but I
Well, it's
liked
the
being
same-
by
it's
the
the same,
beach.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
like you're talking about a 7-minute drive.
So it was
or
like
something.
Torrance, and then it was Manhattan, and it was
Yeah, I could never
Redondo
afford
and-
to live in Manhattan,
No,
and I didn't
no.
really want to. Those guys
But
were
that's-
kind of snobs up there, you know, like in my opinion. But Hermosa was great because I started in the music industry, and some of the bands that I was first touring for lived in Hermosa Beach.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of how I got to know it. And then there was a huge staging company that I would work for part-time when I wasn't touring, and then I ended up working for them full-time. called All Access in Torrance, and they do like the Super Bowl halftime now.
Oh, wow.
So I kind of came up with that company. When I first started with them, they had like not a very big warehouse. I don't know square footage wise, but then they grew into like 3 or 4 different buildings.
Crazy.
Right?
Yeah.
Like and we're all over the industry. We were doing, J-Lo and Madonna and like all the A-list acts and just custom. It was a lot of fun stuff. But at the time, anyways, I was involved with some freestyle motocross and like on the production side, that side and stuff. So like living in California just made sense.
Oh, sure.
If I wasn't touring with the band, then I was at home and I always had work.
Yeah. Well, there's so many opportunities out there. I mean,
and I love living out there at the beach, man. Like I
Yeah.
grew up here. So like I was a mountain kid.
Oh, sure.
I never got to travel. I'd never seen the ocean until I was like 16 years old because that's how poor we were. Like
right.
a family vacation was a camping trip,
Yeah.
which was cool. I look back at that and there's so many life lessons in that.
Oh, sure.
But like we never got to go to Disney World or like a beach, right?
Right.
I have family members that are older than I am and they've never seen the ocean. And they don't care to. There's just like
it's
Colorado
weird like that.
landlocked,
Yeah.
man.
And it's funny because the same thing with me. It was just being military and going from place to place to place. And then you find these families, like even in Tennessee, it's like you find families that never left the state. I'm like,
Right.
well, get in your car and drive. This is a little ridiculous. What's wrong with you? That's
At least
why
go to North Carolina or something,
Yes.
Go to the
Right?
mountains, yeah.
go somewhere, right?
But I get it too. Like now I kind of feel that way. I don't want to go anywhere. I have been all over the world and that was one thing I wanted to do, but I understand like those older guys in my family, some of my uncles and stuff, like they don't want to leave here. Like, why would I leave here?
Yeah.
Everywhere else sucks. I'm
Yeah.
like, oh yeah, you guess
They go
you're
somewhere
right.
else.
Yeah.
All they do is complain
Yeah.
anyway.
I
They're
told
like,
you it was a waste of time. I told you you'd be back, like that's the whole MO. So super cool. I'm super fortunate it was here and it wasn't like, God, I don't know. It would be a horrible spot to grow up.
Well, I'll give you an
I
example.
mean, there's some
After-
bad spots.
After California, I moved back to basically my mom's hometown. And then after being gone for like almost 20 years, you get back there and I'm like, this is not, I'm
Right.
so used to, like you said, the life, the opportunities and all that. And I think I spent a year and a half and just got a kind of job transfer. And I'm like, I literally just one day just packed up everything in my car. Like the original story of going from Tennessee to California, I did that from Tennessee to Colorado.
So you just picked and moved out of Tennessee, and where did you move in Southern California and start training?
Oh, so originally it was Huntington Beach.
Okay.
Out of Fabiani
Some wild
Hills,
dudes
yeah.
down there too. Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's how I got hooked up with the Tito Ortiz and Rob McCulloughs and stuff like that. So we were part of Team Punishment for a while, and then Rampage came along and like his career, like him and I were high school rivals, and I brought him out to California, and then we just came out.
Oh
together.
really?
Yeah, and then and then in Pride he started to kind of take off the same as Tito, but 2 different directions. So then we created Team Rampage. And then we were part of that for a while. And then things kind of fell apart. And then, instead of getting into the whole dark side of things, I'm like, you know what? This isn't worth it. It's going to lead to trouble.
He's a character,
I got
man.
a family now, and I just took off, So one of the better decisions I've ever made. Normally I don't back down from a fight, but I'm like, when you start thinking about other people.
That kind of was the severing of you being in that professional fight world then, I guess.
Yeah,
at that point.
pretty much. It was, did it, done it. I'm ready to, and just to get away from that life, When you're younger, you want opportunity. It's not a bad place to be,
Right. I mean, that was the realization for me to move back here was like having kids. And I was like,
yeah.
It was a great place to live, and I'm glad I got to live there for 15 years and go all over the world and stuff before I started having kids. Because that fucking changes everything. You can't explain that to somebody that doesn't have kids either.
Right.
Like until it actually happens to you. But you start looking around. Like I remember skating down like Hermosa Beach, or on the boardwalk or the Strand.
boardwalk. Is that where all the bars? It was like all the 8 or 9 different bars up there.
Shit, bars. You could go to house parties, man.
Right?
All the poor people there just had house parties on the
right.
beach, right? And you just go house to house, especially on 4th of July.
Oh,
the
sure.
bars would be empty.
Yeah.
And each house there would have like door guys, and there'd be fights. I think cops were like filming episodes out there and shit, and the beach police in their shorts and the 4-wheelers and the whole.
That's right. Yeah.
It was bad. But yeah, I was skateboarding down the Strand, and I had an infant at the time, and I'm just going by all these young teens that hang out at the pier and stuff, and some of them are slammed out on heroin. There's some of them are smoking weed. Some of them are down there drinking. Other kids are surfing, wreaking havoc. Some kids are down there skating. You know, I just started looking around and going, I don't know if this is the best place for the kids to grow up, right? So we moved to Redondo Beach, which is a little bit more. It's like literally 4 miles up the up the Strand. You can ride a beach
You
cruiser.
can be there and not know you just left the next town. Like,
right. So I was like, okay, it's time to like kind of move out of Hermosa, right? Which isn't that really that far. So moved into Redondo, and we waited until the kids were basically going to get into elementary school. And, you know, my wife was taught dance there, and she has ballet studios here now. But it was just a different level, right? Like these parents had so much money there, you know, that were all coming from Manhattan Beach. So there's this whole like keeping up with the Joneses too, right? It was like a status thing. Do you drive a BMW? Do you have a cell phone? How much money can your dad spend on private classes and all this sort of stuff? And I never really saw that side of it until I had kids, because let's take it. I wasn't going to go hang out in a ballet studio unless I was trying to hang out with my wife. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, no, I think that was the big catalyst for me. And then I started thinking about, well, where do I want him to grow up? And at that point I had been all over the world. And at the time when I was living there, I was in the process of, I was this close to buying a place in Cape Town just to have like a second place to go.
sure.
South Africa is fucking amazing. If you've never been there, it's definitely a bucket list place to go, for sure.
I heard it's
Cape
great
Town
for
specific.
swimming.
You know, I'll tell you a crazy story about that. Like, I don't want to take up all of your time, but I'm going to get into that here for a minute. So one of the things I did when I was on tour with rock bands on my days off was go to bars and surf. So I could go rent surfboards all around the world and then just go find breaks. And they had iPhones were just around about the time that I started doing this, or the internet at least. I don't know if I think I had a BlackBerry.
Yeah, I was going to say
touring
BlackBerry was like, if you had the BlackBerry, you were cool.
Well, the cool part about it is we had Messenger on it, so BlackBerry Messenger, and
That's
it would
right.
work
Everywhere.
BlackBerry to BlackBerry, but you didn't have to have cell service. I can't remember, because like going in between all those countries, and if you're on tour with a rock band, you're talking like sometimes, especially when you get over into Europe, you might be in another country overnight.
Right.
You might only be in a country for a day. So to go sign up for cell phone service or something is
it's crazy.
ridiculous, right?
We had to do that in Japan all the time. Every time we went, it's like, for 3 weeks, I need a cell phone.
Right. And then you're buying some throwaway piece of shit that doesn't work anyways, right? It's like, who are you going to call? I just wanted to talk to the guys I was on the road with. So we had BlackBerries, but you could still get on the internet. So I would look at, I think it was like surf.com or something, and it had a surf report for each beach. And I figured this out living in Southern California. It was like, this is a way to look at the surf and see what it's going to be tomorrow. And there's all kinds of people on there that rate it, and they rate it for shark danger, and like they rate each beach for weather, break, swell, people. Like there was all these different ratings on there. And some of it was in real time. So you could look at San Onofre State Beach and see how many people were out there surfing.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's kind of cool. Because it did something with the weather and or they got lifeguard reports, or I don't know how it worked, but super cool, right? Like once one of my surf buddies showed that to me, I was like, this is the fucking jam. So then I started using that when I was on tour, and I would find surf spots. Well, when I was in Cape Town, I was like, there's no way I'm surfing there. Like the second day we were there that I had spent in Cape Town, we took a boat tour, and they drug this dummy of a seal behind it, and the sharks come completely out of the water.
Oh, right.
And
I've seen it on Shark Week.
It was the first time I had seen a great white in person.
That's crazy.
And it was fucking mind-blowing, dude. You're talking about something that weighs like 3,000 pounds, like bigger than... Have you ever been to like a rodeo or something and seen like those bulls
The big
jumping
bulls,
around,
yeah,
or
yeah.
a bison or something like that?
Yeah.
Something bigger than that, that's super fast, that comes completely out of the water with just... I mean, they're the supreme predator of the ocean.
Isn't it like the most shark infested area?
Oh, yeah.
That's what I was saying. It's good for
Right.
swimming, and I'm like, I love going to the beach, but like the ocean is just, So when I left Southern California, I'm like, I'm okay with not seeing the ocean.
Right.
But see, I got it good because my wife, her family lives in Southern California, so it's almost like anytime we want,
get to go back.
We get to go back.
That's awesome.
So it's great.
Yeah. So anyways, I'm in Cape Town, and I'm looking up the surf report. I'm going to shorten this up a little bit. I'm looking up the surf report, and where we were staying was kind of like a harbor district or something. It was really cool. There was all these like world-class sailboats, like from the racing teams, and they had like a ship building place, and it was really cool. But there was no like surf break, and then the only spot where you could maybe catch a break is where we had just went on this tour and saw great whites coming out of the water. So I'm looking up surf spots. So it was there were signs everywhere, like on the beach, like basically enter the water at your own risk.
Sure.
Right? Like,
Yeah.
so I'm looking up the surf report. I find this little town that's like an hour away. It's called Musenberg, and it's kind of up I think it's on the Atlantic side of the tip, kind of like further north. I don't know. I'd have to look it up. But anyways, I take this cab to Musenberg, and we had to go through like a couple villages that didn't have like running water. Like these people were carrying buckets of water on their head. And I had trouble trying to find a cab that would even take me out there from the city. They're like, no. Because it was like dirt. So I think there were some dirt roads we went down, but I found this one cab. He's like, "Oh yeah, I used to live out there. I'll totally take you. Super cool guy." And he's like, "Hey, we got to stop at the Petro or whatever, the gas station, and get some candy." So it was like you had to pay a toll to go through some of these villages, like handing out candy to kids and shit, right? Or
Okay.
they'd stop the cab and like
Right.
I don't know what they do.
Right.
But it was super cool experience, right? And so I get to Musenberg. It's this little like German city, super cool spot. And it is it's a surfer's dream. It's like, for me anyways, a fat surfer that rides a longboard that's not like out carving. It was literally just break after break after break after break. And originally when I looked up the surf report, I was like, I'm not going to get in the water. I just want to go see this. Because when I saw the shark rating, it was like an 8.7 or something, and I'm used to like Redondo Beach is like, or Rat Beach or Hermosa Beach, it's like nil, right? Like we have like leopard sharks or something, but a white shark in there is like very slim. So your chances of a shark attack there is like 1.2 is how it was rated back in the day. This basically said, and it was funny because I think the guys that wrote the report found humor in it because they were surfers, and it said meat on a stick. It was like very sharky. It was like a whatever it was. But I got out there, and there was hundreds of people out there surfing. Nobody was in each other's way. So I asked a local. I was like, "Is there a spot to rent a surfboard?" So I was like, "My chances are pretty good, like 1 in 100 at least, right?" There's like 100 people out there.
Is there a saying like if you're running from a bear, you don't have to be the fastest runner, you just have to be the. So is it the same thing? If you come encounter with a shark, you don't have to be the fastest swimmer, just faster than the slowest.
I think it's wrong place, wrong time, man. I mean, I guess you could apply that to a bear attack, but yeah, if you're with a group of people, I don't think it matters, dude. I think it's luck of the draw.
Luck of the draw.
And a lot of guys just lose their arms. They lose limbs, right? Like that pro surfer girl that lost her arm.
Yeah.
Because I guess the sharks like taste it and they're like, "Oh, this tastes like shit." And they basically like fuck off, or I don't know, man. But anyways, I'm like, shit. Okay, there's hundreds of people out there, so my chances of getting eaten by a shark can't be that bad.
Right.
So I surfed. I had a fucking incredible day. Caught more waves than I've ever caught in one spot. It was so easy. The water was pretty warm and just an incredible spot because you're so close to the equator, and like the people were super cool. And the next day I go back and I'm looking at the surf report to go back, and somebody got attacked there and eaten
Oh, wow.
the next day.
And you're still surfing?
I was like, no, I wasn't surfing it. I was thinking about going back, like taking the $120 cab ride to go back because I had another day off, and I was like, I'm not going back.
No.
I'm good. I got it in once, but no, it's fucking wild down there. But anyways, I was thinking about buying a place there. Decided, once we had kids, this was pre having kids. I'd been all over the world, and that was the only spot where I was like, maybe I could live there, like someplace out of the country. But I love America so much, and just everything that we stand for. And even though all the times I got picked on or in fist fights in England and all kinds of crazy shit touring around the world, this is still the best spot. And then I was like, well, where do I want to live in America? And it was just like the dirt here, like growing up playing in the dirt. And it's just different, man. I don't know. Maybe it's just because it's home to me.
Now, were you born and raised here?
Yeah.
In Evergreen?
Yeah.
Okay.
About a mile from here, which is
wow.
kind of wild. But yeah, sorry, back to your story. So what was you severed from the professional fight game. And then at that point, were you a black belt in jiu-jitsu and decided like, hey, this is a form of income, like, or I just want to teach, or what was kind of the catalyst for you getting into that? And
I think it was out here, but I had experience. No, it wasn't out here. It was in you know what? After thinking back, so I had a gym out in Southern California, but I was more running the gym as like an administrator as opposed to coaching. And then obviously growing up, like helping my professors and coach and things like that. One of the benefits I had was I trained with so many different professors that I got to pick and choose like what I felt was best from each of them. I didn't have like one professor, which I think took me a long time to get my black belt, was when you go from, in a sense, professor to professor, it's like it was good in how I teach and coach, but it was bad for the amount of time that I spent with a professor. When I got my black belt, I got it from Giuliano Prado. But him and I had a history of throughout the fighting career because he was helping us train. He had his own gym. We started with him when he was right off of. Do you remember the Ferrari dealership in Newport Beach?
I do. Yeah,
it's a really nice one. So he was like right across the street from that, and that's where we met years ago. And then as time went on, again, training with this professor, that professor, and I think, again, going back to everything you do in life helps you to build on what you're going to end up doing with it, So it's like, for me, I think that doing that, like, I could have been, I think if I did the math, I was going to be a 5th degree black belt at this time next year. But I'm only a 2nd degree now. I'd be a 3rd degree next year. But throughout that whole training, I was able to pick up a lot of good things,
That really helped me. I don't know if you remember, once I first started with you, I was still on the road quite a bit. Like I didn't have this going, which is nice. It's freed me up not to travel so much. And the pandemic totally shut everything down, including you guys. Yeah. But I started going to different gyms. When I was on the road, just like do a walk-in on an open mat. Some places were accepting, some wouldn't let you do shit. They were like, yeah, sorry, we don't take outsiders, basically, because we don't know you.
I mean, we pick and choose.
Yeah.
And then a lot of times I might have to pick up the phone and talk to somebody on the phone just to get a feel for it.
Right. Which makes sense, like, especially a guy my size, like walking in and going, hey, I want to roll.
I know, right? Yeah. I got experience. And they're like, right. We ain't got nobody for you.
But it was crazy because what that made me learn is some of these places that are out there, like, okay, let's put it in perspective this way, like a Gracie gym. The white belts there are as good as some of the gyms that I went into that I was rolling with guys that were wearing like a purple or a brown belt.
Sure. Yeah.
It was insane.
Yeah.
Like just the level of, picking the right teacher, the right professor, or,
Yeah.
or affiliating yourself with a proper school.
Right.
Yeah, because some of them I walked into and I was like, I was getting, manhandled by white belts that were like, sometimes I was used to rolling against, I don't know. It was just different,
Different coaching
gyms,
styles.
yeah.
Yep. And then,
And that could just be for gym and region, maybe an area.
yeah, I mean, my rule is if you come to my gym and, we've been, now, especially now that we opened up in Conifer, we have people that train somewhere else and then, they'll come to us. And then I just had a guy I rolled with. I thought he was brand new at it. And I start rolling with him and he's doing things like, using his foot in certain ways. And I'm like, so we got done. And I'm like, so what belt are you? Because you're not new. Mm-hmm. And he goes, no, I'm not new. And I didn't know. I didn't sign him up. He's just, I come in, I'm teaching. He's one of the new students. And my wife's like, oh, yeah, I signed him up last week. And then we start talking and he's a blue belt from somewhere else. And I'm like, okay, well, he shows some skills. But my rule is, and his thing was, I don't know what the etiquette is when you go to a new gym. And I told him, I said, my rule is, okay, whether I believe you're a true blue belt or a purple belt or what, then it's not up to me. If you earned it from somewhere else, I'm going to respect that. So if you're a blue belt and I don't feel you have the skills to necessarily be a blue belt.
Do you take a belt away at that point?
Never. Okay. But what in my mind is, it's in a sense challenging, and I'll be totally honest with people, is if he comes in as a blue belt, I'm not going to tell him I don't think you're a blue belt, but what I'm going to tell him is I think you lack this and that, so let's catch you up to speed, because again, going back to the whole coaching thing, BTT really, in the early 2000s, they were one of the best fighting teams in the world. And it was like they're all about fundamentals. And anybody that's played high-level sports of any kind, football, boxing, that the fundamentals is where it's at. Yeah. High school, you can get to a senior and you start pulling off this fancy stuff, and then you get into college, guess what? You're going back to fundamentals. You can watch championship fighters and boxers, and you see how they get to the top, and then all of a sudden they fall off. Well, I witnessed that. I know why a lot of these top fighters fall off is because, again, they get to the top. They don't feel like they need to train as hard. They feel like they don't need to do all this boring stuff. You know what I mean? But that's the fundamentals. When you stop doing the fundamentals, you start falling off. You know what I mean? And like I said, I witnessed this with some of the guys on my team. They get to the top, they're on top of the world, and next thing you know, they give them a few years and they look like they don't even know how to fight because they're too good. They don't want people to push them anymore. Yeah. They're too good for that. No names, you know who I'm talking about. Yeah. And it's like, instead, if you always need to be pushed, you always need the fundamentals. And I'm a stickler for that. And I was just talking about this with one of my guys the other day. And even a couple of years ago, we had a couple purple belts coming from different regions. And the last thing they say to us is walk out and they go, man, you got some damn tough white belts. And again, it's just the fundamentals, teaching the fundamentals,
Well, it's funny because when I guess, what would you call it? I want to say moonlighting, but that's totally the wrong word. But like, if you're a walk-in at a gym, what do you guys call them? Just a walk-in?
Yeah, I call them walk-ins. Yeah.
Some of the gyms I went to, they accused me of sandbagging because I was a white belt with no stripes, and I would travel with my gi in case it was a gi class or something. And I would go in at that point, and I didn't have anything that I accredited but a ton of mat time. Yeah. And I was smoking some dudes, and then I got accused a couple times of like, sandbagging. Are you really a white belt? Yeah. Like, sandbagging son of a bitch.
I know, right?
Yeah. It's kind of funny, not in a bad way. Like they were just like, damn, you're good for a white belt.
Yeah.
And I attribute that to you, so thank you.
Oh.
Yeah, you needed another drink or any ice or anything?
No, okay. I'm good here.
Cool. There's a little ice in that Yeti cup right there, too. Okay.
But yeah, you get and again, going back to the fundamentals. I mean, again, a lot of gyms, and even as a coach, that's one of the toughest things that I had to learn, because when you're trying to develop a gym, you're trying to develop the memberships. Your biggest worry is keeping these members, and you're like, am I coaching? You know, in a sense, I'm coaching because I've had so many high level coaches that I kind of follow their whole system, and it's a proven system, so why change it? But then when you're worried about your members, you're like, okay, am I teaching? Do they feel it's too boring? All this is going through your head as a coach, and then it gets to a point where you need to just say,
And they're
hey,
watching YouTube videos at night.
yeah, a few of them. Yeah, you get a few of them, especially at the beginning stages of opening up a gym. You're like, am I doing this right? I know what it takes for them to be good, but am I doing it wrong? Should I be showing all this fancy stuff? Should I jump to the fancy stuff so they're happy and and then we've been open again. We've been open going on 5 years, I think. We got 2 gyms. We got a nonprofit now, and I just sat down and talked with some of my old guys, and even he was just telling me, he's like, one of the things that we do that really develops a positioning is, he said, it was so boring at the time, but I just trusted you. I'm like, all right, whatever. And I think back now that when he rolls with anybody at any level, he just rolled with a brown belt. We went to a camp, and he rolled with a brown belt. And once he established top position, the fight was his. And then he said, he even said it. He goes, you know what? Going back to that boring drill that you made us do 15 minutes every single class that came in is why I'm a blue belt at such a high level.
Well, and it's like those fundamentals when I was walking into those gyms were key, because some of those guys were trying some crazy shit. It's easy to catch people when they're trying crazy shit. But not only that, or I found personally, and I'm no expert in it by any means, but also it gives you an opportunity once you get to a good position where you can try some crazy shit yourself, I guess, from my standpoint, It's like, okay, I can try this because I know I'm in a safe position and can get back to
that's
wherever.
It. Exactly. Right? The fundamentals teach you how to move. It teaches how to establish the position. It teaches, and then you know how these so-called advanced moves, you know how to apply it now. But it's like somebody coming in, and we have a guy that is kind of at that stage, but I've dealt with them enough, people like this enough, that you know how to develop them, because they're the kind of guys that watch the YouTube films before they sign up, and you ask them, do they have any experience? And they're none. But then you know that they go home, watch the YouTube videos. Right. And then they lay on their back, they get kind of smashed the whole time, and they're trying to pull this thing off. And I'm like, he's an athlete. He's built, like, you look at him, you're like, you could have been a college athlete of whatever you wanted to be. But he's trying to get fancy before he knows what he's really doing. So you allow him to kind of get fancy with it, and then we say, okay, that's not working for you. Let's go back to the basics,
Right.
But yeah.
Yeah. So fundamentals are key. So tell me about this nonprofit, because I know that it has something to do with women and self-defense. And I'm a big proponent of all of that because I got daughters and an awesome wife. And the last thing I ever want is for them to get hurt. And a shout out to my buddy Jeremiah Wilbur, too, that I've had on the podcast a couple times. I actually need to link you two up, I think. He's running a nonprofit that does like human trafficking and domestic violence type stuff. Jeremiah Wilbur, former Green Beret. He's a Colorado guy.
Okay.
Lives in Colorado now.
Okay.
And he spent 20 years in Special Forces and the Army, and just a bad motherfucker. He's a real cowboy and outfitter, but he started this, the War Party movement, and he's doing some amazing stuff to help combat human trafficking, domestic violence, like removing women from domestic violence situations.
Mm-hmm.
And then also they have War Party Ranch, where it's like building some confidence in these women that maybe have been abused, or young girls or whatever, so that they can go out, get into the world and have some confidence in what they're doing. So, but they're doing it from a ranch setting or an agricultural setting, like teaching them horse skills and how to move cows and that sort of thing. But I think he also he incorporates a shooting part. I think, is like some firearms training, because that's very empowering as well.
Absolutely.
And then I think on the jiu-jitsu side, or, self-defense, like I know that he's got some experience in that as well, but
since we're on that,
be able to link that up. But anyways,
since we're on that would be great. I mean, I would love to, because we're planning on, especially here in Evergreen, our first location is to do our women's self-defense seminar. We've done a few before. And I just, what I've done is basically take really realistic situations, and it's, I tell them right off the bat, some of this is going to be uncomfortable, but it's not going to be as uncomfortable if you're actually put in these situations, and knowledge, right? You teach somebody something. It's not just showing you something. I'm going to explain why we do this so it makes sense. And I'm a firm believer that if I do something, or if I learn something and I understand why I'm doing it, it almost like sticks to you. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So it's like,
well, and I think that's a big part of jiu-jitsu too, is it's more of a motor skill almost, right? Like,
right.
Because you can sit there and watch something and and drill and have the perfect partner and all that sort of stuff, right? And like, drilling's one thing, and that's how you learn the fundamentals. But when it actually comes to rolling and it's like crunch time, it's almost like body awareness and knowing where you're at, and taking a second to think and be like, okay, I got to use my brain before I start, exerting so much or getting in a good position, right?
Yeah.
Like,
absolutely. And doing it so much, repetition. And that's what I try to get in, remind everybody too, is like, even if this seems boring, you have not done it enough times, because it needs to be reactive. The moment you think, and this goes for boxing, kickboxing, MMA, UFC, anything, the moment you start to think, you are moving too slow. If you and I are fighting, and if in my head I'm going to say, here's my combination, I'm already too late. It needs to be done too reactive, right? So same thing. Like if I'm like, I got to take you down, you're a better boxer than me. As soon as I think and hesitate, it's too late. It needs to be opening, go.
Right. And that's kind of what I was getting at with like the motor skill, right?
Absolutely.
It's like something that's pre-wired in your brain. And the last podcast that we just did, we had a strength and conditioning coach and from Landau Performance, Eric Tilley. He's awesome. And he was talking about the neurotransporters, or like a insulation that goes around your nerves that actually, like, he broke it down scientifically, basically, of like, they get guys ready for like the NFL Combine to run a faster 40-yard dash. So they take somebody that might be a 4.6 and they're trying to turn him into a 4.3, and it all comes down to technique, fundamentals, skill, head placement, finger placement. Like, it's wild. The science that's behind it before the guy even starts running.
But and there's a lot. I can remember my strength and conditioning coach. There was times like, going back to doing squats with a broomstick, and I'm like, this is a waste of my time. And then when they explain, a good coach will explain why we're doing this. You don't question it. I'm doing squats with a broomstick, and I'm getting a workout in because my technique, my posture, everything was horrible. But what he did, he fixed that, and immediately doing squats with a broomstick all this time. But because I fixed my posture, fixed this, fixed that, my weight would jump up 25, 50 pounds off of my one rep.
Because it's all body placement and positioning and bone structure and all that.
Going back to seeing results and all that, it just sticks in your head. And it's like, that's kind of what I took from that. It's like when my coaches would explain to me why we're doing certain things, whether I still believed it or not, but seeing results, I'm like, done. You got my full attention. Whatever you say, I'm doing, Yeah. So, but yeah, I'd love to meet up with this guy. Yeah. It's kind of right up the same alley.
So yeah, explain to me kind of what a class is, or if a female wants, it's females only, right?
Well, the seminar is going to be basically all ages females. Okay. And what it does is it's our way of introducing women to basically the sport, put them in certain situations not basic jiu-jitsu, but put them straight into a scenario that they may be in. And this is how it works. This is why we're doing this. And that may be all it takes for them to say, oh, I should try this jiu-jitsu thing out, which in turn, at some point, may save their life, later on.
Now, I got a question, and this is something that I've kind of thought about. And I could be totally wrong on this. I have no experience in teaching this or any sort of thing like that. But when you involve a weapon like let's say an edge weapon, right? A knife, a blade of some sort, jiu-jitsu might not be the best thing. That might not be the best skill to have, right? To be super close to somebody.
Running.
Yeah.
Is probably the best.
Getting away.
Away.
Yeah.
If you are, in a sense, it depends on the situation, right? I mean, we can go over different scenarios, but it could be sometimes you are put in a situation where you can't run. Now,
creating distance, though, right? Like spider guard type stuff.
Yeah. Another thing too is closing distance is sometimes good. Mm-hmm. Obviously, and the one thing that's good about jiu-jitsu, and the way, again, going back to, there's certain basic rules to jiu-jitsu, right? 3 points of contact always. I'm a firm believer in controlling one arm at all times. Right? So that goes into play. Like, let's say you have a knife, but if I'm so used to training and grappling, and then I have to focus on one arm and attacking that arm, it's going to come into play, A blade, you got to figure, you got to either get real distance or get super close, because if you get in that strike zone and there's no way, you're not going to block, you're not going to karate block, anything like that.
Even a firearm too, I think. I mean, these are all crazy scenarios to even think about, but yeah, I think closing a distance with a firearm too sometimes, right? Like,
exactly. I mean, that's why training is so important too, right? Because
especially, okay, I'm going to take this back though. Closing distance if somebody's got a hold of you, right? If somebody's arm length away, the best thing to do if you and I are sitting 6 feet apart like we are now, or whatever this is, 4 feet apart, is to probably create distance.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, the knife, right? The blade. If I can keep that distance between you and me, is better than me trying to engage you with a blade.
Yeah, 100%.
A gun, something like that, depends. I mean, obviously, I run, you shoot. If you in your mind, you're going to shoot me, and the more distance I cover, you're going to shoot. Now my chances are what? Just hoping you miss. But if you pull something out and you're going to fire a gun at this distance, 4 feet, 5 feet, I better close that distance as quick as I can, So again, that's what's tough.
It's not like the Wild West where you do the old pace off and
yeah. And it's tough though, because you have to train, in a sense, the scenarios. But jiu-jitsu is great for everything, for all that. If I had to close the distance,
just the body awareness, right? Like
for sure.
And having some sort of motor skill to get out of a situation.
Yeah, absolutely. And you got to think, if you're again, go back to, everything has to do with situation. But if I know jiu-jitsu and you have a gun, and I know if I try to run, I first try to diffuse the situation. But if I know that you're going to pull the trigger at some point, I need to close that distance. Now with training and your lack of training, as soon as that gun is out of play, then you're getting choked out, you're getting armbar, you're getting swept, things like that. But the whole time this is going on, you need to focus on that weapon. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But and going back to, even, I love talking about the 15, 16-year-old young females that learn jiu-jitsu, and then you have these older male adults that come in, and then you're watching them school them in fighting.
Well, if you look at it, I can't say this word right now. The whiskey. Statistically. I always have trouble with this.
Okay.
I think it might be the CTE that I've gotten in the past from doing stupid shit. But anyways, if you look at it from an attack standpoint or a situation standpoint, the likelihood of somebody pulling a gun or a knife on you are very, very slim, right? Like, but rape or sexual assault is super fucking high.
Oh, sure.
like really high. Like the chances of that happening to a young female, I don't think it happens to males very often, maybe in certain situations, but yeah, if you're a young female, like,
San Francisco, probably, right?
yeah, kids, you know,
Yeah, no, it's funny too because
it's the worst.
It's going back to the situations of when you're attacked by a non. I mean, give you an example. Somebody that comes in and they're doing jiu-jitsu for the first time. I use this as examples and say, see what you do naturally. That's what an attacker that with no training will do naturally. You do, if you go to do a move like a jiu-jitsu move, you're going to have to put probably half the effort. That's why it works so quick, so good, because let's say a rape situation, which we call the guard, and he's in there double choking you, his hips are so high, and you pull off a scissor sweep, no problem. He's got his arms around your neck. You break his arms, no problem. Super quick.
Collar choke if he's wearing any sort of clothing.
Yeah, all
right?
that.
Yeah.
And that's why we want to do these women's self-defense more often. It's just you get caught up in work and things like that. And it's like, I want to be able to do something every 6 months in a sense where it's free. Because what it does is if they come in, they learn it, they love it, they'll be back, or they sign up. You know, if they love it.
But that's
they
awesome.
talk.
You guys are offering this class for free. Do you have to be in the community, or can people travel in for it?
Anybody. Yeah, anybody.
That's awesome.
And that's just part of the nonprofit. So going back to the nonprofit is in you figure in the last 20 years, just whether it's altercations in the street or seeing things happen, like you say, hanging out at bars. San Francisco, right?
It's wild there, man. I don't know if you've been lately, but it is.
Oh
fucking
no,
insane.
I probably won't go back.
Yeah,
I went there once, and
I only have to go for work sometimes, and it is. It's the Wild West, man.
Yeah, I see it on the news, and I'm like, no desire.
Yeah.
But just different things. Like, I mean, I can tell you stories along the line from, and it's not all about jiu-jitsu. Jiu-jitsu is just an avenue of, like, this is something we're going to help and give them. But at the same time, give you an example, like, my wife and I were perfect partners because, especially when it comes to this nonprofit, because I have a totally different side than she does. See, I wasn't a victim in a sense, but I was bullied in school, right? So I know what that was like. I bullied a kid once in my life, and I still have that same feeling of bullying a kid. And I'm thinking, why I bullied that kid was because I wanted to. It was a time of my my life where I was probably in 6th grade, and I was wanting to be accepted into this other group. And
it's always outside the influence and who's watching, right? Because I did the same thing, man. Like, I was bullied and I bullied people.
Yep. Yeah. And then I got to where in middle school and high school, I never got in a fight because, one, I was a top level wrestler. 2, I got into jiu-jitsu kickboxing. So even with our football team, the moment I stepped in as a freshman, it was me and our freshman tailback that they tried to initiate us in the weight room. And we were going to stand by. So we grabbed the weights and we started swinging weights, and we were going to fight. So from that day on till my senior year, there was no initiations. All that crap was out the window. And I made a point to protect everybody. I was a jock, but I was best friends with the nerds. So in high school, it was like, it didn't matter who you were. You know what I mean? It wasn't like, oh, I need to be accepted in this group or that group.
It was totally different when I went to school, man. It was very cliquey.
Oh,
it was strange, man. There was people that would fight just over, because, like, growing up here, just a ranch community, there was a lot of people that were still kind of like a ranch community. It's not like it is now. I think this is more like a suburb or city now, than anything. Yeah. But when I was going to school, it was like, you could get in a fight for wearing cowboy boots or something.
Over something stupid, right?
Dumb, yeah.
Or you're exactly right. I can remember that more in the middle school, where it's like, they would just find a reason to fight. Why? Because you need to fight, and we fought because we went to different schools too, and
Yeah, the Cowboys fucking hated me because I was kind of like the punk rocker. Like there wasn't very many. Like punk rock wasn't popular at that time,
Right.
you know. Or
Yeah.
suede Van shoes, you know, or like a black jean jacket with a Slayer
That's
fucking
funny.
patch on it or
you
something.
and Luke would have been best friends.
I know. It's so funny. He's the angry hippie, man, is what I call him because he's such a good guy. I love that dude.
he's
yeah.
going back to nonprofit. So that's kind of the angle that I went. And then as far as, growing up or during a career, I have a addictive personality. So, and you know how it is, entertainment, you're in that whole party scene, you're in the, the fight scene, same thing. It's, if you're in an entertainment industry, that's how it went.
Just being around those people, it makes, I hate to say this, but it makes going back and talking to a normal person very fucking boring. You know what I mean? It's like, really? That's the story that you told me? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Like you
I don't
just
know.
took 15 minutes of my time.
I don't feel that way
really...
now, and I don't feel like I'm better than anybody, but
No.
being around like a high level of characters and people that are not very reserved and are very open,
Yeah.
and spending hours in a day, like in a gym or in a firefighter community, I'm sure is the same sort of thing. You know what I mean? Like the stuff that police and firemen see.
Oh, for sure.
Is fucking insane, right? And like, when you're in a fucked up situation, like the best way to deal with it is humor, I think.
Yeah.
And it's
Humor is huge, and that's why I love making people laugh. It's the best medicine. It really is.
It is, yeah.
Anyway, going back to the nonprofit. So then you have the side of my wife where she's witnessed the whole been the victim. She's been a victim of like domestic abuse and things like that, and then together starting off. Sometimes you hit, even when we first opened the gym, we whether it's help from our peers or help from certain organizations. You know what I mean? Because I had to experience all that. It's like I can either let it go to waste, or there's people out there that have no clue how to get extra help, right? There's some people out there that are judged because they're a lower class or things like that, So we run across being a gym, we run across that all the time. So whether it's like, we can go on for hours on stories, but there was a kid when I was coaching wrestling in Tennessee. It was very emotional because I would go out and coach wrestling. This kid was part of gangs and in trouble and this and that. And I could remember when this kid came on, the first thing I thought, because I didn't know anything else to think, is this kid is going to be badass. This is the kind of kid that is fighting everything that he's doing. He's fighting for it. He's got a reason to be fighting. And I remember teachers coming to me, the principal, I got, you got that kid on your team? Good luck with him. Like, yeah,
right.
Thanks. I don't need luck. You're going to see. And then halfway through the season, I got teachers coming to me. I got the dad. We're crying. We're in tears because the dad's telling me like, I can't thank you enough for what you did for my kid. And I'm like, I didn't do anything. I'm just the messenger. Mm-hmm. I'm taking the skills. He's doing it all by himself. I'm just able to I'm the messenger. I'm giving him the skills to excel at something. He started believing in himself. And then the next year,
I think it takes an extreme IQ to be street smart.
Oh,
you know what I mean?
To me, they're
different. Like you can't take an IQ test and it show up on there. It's a totally different learned thing to hustle or to be in a situation where you might even have to steal food so you can eat. You know what I mean? Like think about the drive that those people have and the appreciation, for
absolutely.
for certain things. Like,
yeah. I mean, it's so anyway. So different stories. Everything from a young female that kept walking to my door at a gym in Southern California, and I happened to be she could have probably done it 20 times. I just happened to be there 3 times, and she'll come to the door and then she'll turn around and walk off. And then she'll come back, and then it would be like another day. She'll come to the door, turn around, and walk off. So on the third time I saw this, I chased her out, and I said, hey. And then we talked, and I said, come on in for a second, you know? So we go in, we talk, and this and that, and we get her signed up. She starts cardio kickboxing, right? Just something super simple. But the women in that class kind of gravitated to her because she was a young female. She felt accepted in something. It's to a point where she was like coming in with a hoodie on, tucking her head. Didn't want to talk to anybody, super shy to where 5 months later she comes in, I'm like, what's up, girl? Just playing around. And then she's like telling me about her day. Completely changed. Started wearing makeup, things like that. Started feeling better about herself. That, no matter what took place, something clicked to where it changed her life, and then she loved it.
I think just the bonds that you build in there are real friendships, right? Like some of my best friends I got in fistfights with.
Exactly.
Right off the bat, or come from jiu-jitsu, like some of my closest people that I trust up here are people that have either hit me in the face in sparring in your gym, or
because you took it to that
choked
level,
me,
right?
or armbarred me,
know,
or
right?
whatever, right? It's like there's a mutual respect that happens when it's like, I can't explain it. I think it's just a natural human thing, and I think this happened in warrior culture too.
Oh,
right?
Absolutely.
Like going way back to a tribal situation, and like that's kind of how I equate jiu-jitsu or being involved in a gym or something. Is like you have this little tribe, right?
You're fighting, you're
These
gaining
relationships,
respect.
Same thing with even just talking, right? Like in here at the podcast, like some of the friendships that I've had, or like I feel like this is the deepest conversation I've ever had with you, and we're having it publicly. You know what I mean? It's weird.
I forgot about that.
Yeah. Oh shit.
Now I'm nervous again. No, I'm just kidding.
Right.
But no, and then you have the other side of it, right? So you have the victims. Like my wife, she's just so. It's funny. We were just talking about this the other day. Is if somebody's new at it, then I always offer a free private, right? 1 hour, and say, hey, if you're uncomfortable with trying it out, why? I'll ask them, why are you pushing this off? Why are you uncomfortable? Well, how do I get uncomfortable around other people? Well, why don't you come in? It's just going to be me and you. Let's train. Let me show you a few things. And we do that. And then I always say I have a 95% retention rate, right? Because when I do that, it gets personal. We're always somehow laughing. Some stranger comes in and we end up telling stories or laughing or anything like that. We're connecting within 1 hour. And next thing you know, they're set. They're in our class. Mm-hmm. My wife does it. And I walk by and it's joking, but she's got women crying. She's crying. I'm like, this is a private lesson. So the joke is, I'm like,
you're supposed to be training jiu-jitsu, right?
At the time,
like a therapy session.
At the time, I tell her, I said, listen, you are not allowed to teach private lessons. But she has 100% sign-up retention because she's connecting with these women. There's some kind of connection.
There is a connection because, like, you're stretching, you're warming up. If you're going to jiu-jitsu class, you're expected to be there on time, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And,
unless you're a purple belt, then you feel you don't have to be on time. That's the purple belt joke.
Right. But I'm an old guy, so I need to go and get like warmed up, especially if it's one of those 6 a.m. classes or something.
Oh, sure, yeah.
But like just the conversations that we had at 6 a.m., like right as the pandemic was starting.
Yeah.
And we got doctors in there that are rolling with us, and we're like, "Hey, what do you think?" And they're like, "Well, I don't know. It doesn't seem worse than like the common cold." And
yeah,
you know what I
great.
mean? Like just all this wild shit that you have and the relationships that you build in and outside of it, it's awesome.
Exactly. So take all that, right? Everything that we talked about is like,
and to offer that for free from a nonprofit. I guess I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you.
No, you're fine.
Just going to one class, you're going to build some sort of relationships there.
You are.
And leave with some sort of confidence.
You are.
So that's super rad that
and
you
at
guys
this,
are doing
at
that.
this point, I have 5 women that are higher level belts that have been there, have done that have stories. Everything from my teenagers to my wife. It's like there's going to be some form of connection. Whether you're a child or whether you're a victim. And a lot of times women come to these things because either A, they were a victim, or they understand the world that it's become. you know? So there's always some kind of connection there. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So, and then, so
Well,
we're
even
going to,
to like a group therapy thing. I mean, that's what a court would order or something, right? Is to go
You
to
would
some sort of anger management or anger
that's kind of the,
or victims deal, right? But at that point, you're just sitting in a room, and who likes to do fucking that? I'm sorry, man.
I know, right?
Like, it's like, do some sort of activity, and that's why I really get behind what Jeremiah's doing. He's like, A, we're going to get you out of the fucking situation, and B, once you are out of the situation, we're going to give you something to do, and then C, you got something to fall back on. Now you can go be an outfitter. Now you can go work on a ranch. Now you can be in the mountains all the time,
that's great.
connected
Yeah.
to nature. Like, I really understand that, and that's why I stand behind that, and I want to stand behind your guys's too. So, like, if anybody wants to come to this and they live in the Colorado area, because we have listeners from all over the world, but like primarily majority of them are in the U.S. and we have quite a few in Colorado. But if somebody wants to come to this class, do you guys have a date picked already, or is
we don't. There's a lot of it's so in a sense brand new. It's all I joke, I say it's all in my head, but we're starting to put things down on paper. I want to do it within the next 4 weeks. The best
that quick.
the best thing to do is contact. All I got to do is set the date, because the seminar itself is like, again, practical situations. You know, and the last one I had is in my opinion, it's different than anything else. That's why it'd be great to partner up with your buddy, because I don't do the weapons, the firearms, and things like that. That's not my expertise.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're being attacked by an unarmed man or no weapons or whatever, then that's what we're going to focus on. And like he said, we're going to get you out of that situation. You know, so BTT Evergreen is .com. That has our contact information.
It's Brazilian top team.
Brazilian
right?
top
it's
team
a
in
huge
Evergreen.
national affiliation, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yep.
Or
worldwide.
Yeah.
Yeah. Has a huge history in like I said, the early 2000s. They had huge fight team. You know, in my opinion, at the time was the number one team out there. You know, we can name off fighters that came from there, but at the time it was like the Nogueira brothers, you know what I mean? There was Morilla Bustamante. We can go, the list goes on and on. They were all champions. But anyway, so if somebody's interested, you know, contact, you know, go to that website, or they can text us, they can email us, they can call us. That phone number that they're going to get is either way they can contact us, you know. But yeah, you know, I'm excited because that's just something, because doing the free seminar is to get the women in a sense involved, right? But also it's also a way for us to kind of promote. So we're going after families, in a sense, families in need.
But I think more importantly, it's to protect them then.
Yeah, I
think that's the biggest value in it all, right?
Absolutely.
It's a win-win-win for sure. But look,
exactly.
But like for them to have some sort of confidence or protection, especially if you're in a situation where you're getting abused or something, knowing how to defend yourself is...
Well, that's another
key.
way I think we can reach them, right? Because if, let's say we do this and the lady comes, there may be 1, 2, 3, whatever ladies involved. And if they know, hey, I have somebody I can come to now, because this is in a sense to introduce them to that. But at the same time, if they're in trouble, if they're in a situation, they're now going to have somebody to come to. Yeah. That's somebody that's been there, done that, you know, that's going to walk them through it. We want to focus on, in a sense, right now locally, which is basically the foothills, right? Mm-hmm. Everything from Gilpin County to Park County. We already have kids that, you know, they have deadbeat dads. You know, the mom, you know, I talk to the moms and I tell them, because the dad signs up and the dad won't pay. But I go to the mom and I tell the mom, I don't want you coming in here feeling uncomfortable. Do not. Because your son is not, we're not going to kick him out of the program. We are going to figure it out, but you don't go telling dad that this is what's going on, because we're going to try to get that money out of him, because it's a business, right, in a sense. Mm-hmm. But those are kind of the families we want to go after.
But you're not turning people away just because of their financial situation.
No.
Yeah.
No, nobody should. And then that's kind of where the nonprofit comes in, because if I can take, that's almost like, you know, we talked earlier about addictive personality, or I mentioned I had one. So what you got to do, imagine if you have an addiction to drugs or alcohol or something like that. I got 3 members right now that they're like, they stopped all drinking. They've lost 30 to 40 pounds. It's like because they found something they are now addicted to.
Well, it's very hard to go in and roll, especially if you're going to an open mat where you're rolling for an hour and a half, even on a full stomach.
Oh,
Right?
yeah, right.
Like that's the last thing you want to do is go eat a large pizza and then go to, I'm going to go to open mat.
And then you don't go home.
I mean, there are some
Right.
guys that do that.
You don't
know?
go home and then you just start craving food because you're like, oh, I trained. You're like, no, I want to go home, eat something light, and go to bed.
Yeah.
And then again, what that creates is where you used to drink maybe a beer or whatever every single night. Now you're creating in a sense a distance between that addiction.
Body awareness.
Yeah,
man.
body awareness, right?
That's why I'm
So,
drinking whiskey tonight
and
because I'm
mind
not
awareness.
coming to class until Tuesday.
But anyway, so that's our thing is I know we can reach people. I've seen what jiu-jitsu does and mentally, physically, emotionally, everything. And that's going to be an avenue to reach people. But at the same time, like my wife came up with so many different ideas that we want to work is to be able to, one of my programs is, I want to call it the ambassador program where our kids, we have enough kids. I think we have 80 kids on roster right now. And it's like,
Wow.
these kids have no fear in life. They really don't, especially the ones that have gone out and competed. I'm like, think about what you just did. You went out and competed against a kid that knows as much more than you. Imagine somebody that doesn't know anything. They have no fear. So my ambassador kids program is where I want them to almost be the voice of the community inside their schools. They don't have to stand up for somebody and fight. That's not part of it. But I guarantee you, most of the time, if you're a bully, you're a coward in a sense, right? Now,
the couple times that I did it was strictly outside influence and I felt insecure myself
very
in
good
the situation.
Exactly, and that's the thing. So here's my program is. I want them to step up and say something to kind of protect somebody else, not just be the guy that's texting or filming or whatever the kids do these days.
Fucking stupid, man. When people are just standing there filming somebody get their ass beat, it's ridiculous.
It's ridiculous. And again, going back to I'm not signing them off to police the schools, but I want them to be able to come to me and say, hey, this is what I witnessed today. I want to develop with the different schools, every school in the area, and say, hey, I want to develop a relationship with this school because I'm not expecting our schools have failed the whole bully thing. And I'm not afraid to say it. We all know that, and we have teachers. And I just want to be that person that says, hey, if this is going on, here's a certificate. You give that bully this certificate. You give the victim this certificate that gives them free training. Give me time. Give me 2-3 weeks with this kid because we've been there, right? We know that there's something going on with the bully. There's something going on with the victim. The victim, his in a sense, you said it just a second ago.
Pride.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the bully, same thing. There could be a few different avenues, but there's always an underlying thing. And teachers, I understand teachers don't have time to deal with the kids and this and that.
And I think it's more important now than ever, and I commend you for doing it because it's wild. I don't know if you've heard about some of the shit that's going on with like this woke culture, and I don't get behind it at all, and I don't give a fuck what anybody says or whatever hate mail they send me.
Oh, it's ridiculous.
But like, there's kids now that
I just hope
are
they hand deliver it.
Yeah, they're identifying as animals. So they have to have litter boxes in the school to accommodate, right? So think about how bad they're going to get picked on just for being different. Yeah. Like for me, it was back in the day, if you had a piercing, like growing up in this community, if you had a piercing or wore different colored shirts or a bad religion shirt with a cross, crossed out in it, fuck, man, you might get your ass beat,
Yeah, it's
I don't know what kids are going through now. I have no idea, but I can only imagine it's harder. And, the one thing that we didn't have to deal with with social media. And
So
all these
that's
kids are on
tough,
social
yeah.
media because I think the suicide rate has gone up
Oh,
tremendously.
we know there's statistics on that.
Right.
Yeah.
And we've done episodes on suicide, and I know people firsthand, that have taken their life, and I don't know every scenario, but I would imagine as a kid, and I don't know any kids, thank God, that have taken their life, but it's something that they cannot get away from, right? So,
Right.
Back when I was bullied, it was only at school
Right.
or only when I ran into those assholes on the street,
Sure. Yeah.
or at a party or something like that. But now it's totally different. Like, it's all a majority of it's done online, and the
it is.
shaming's done online, and somebody accidentally gets it could be as simple as a photo.
Yeah.
Somebody
Oh.
bending over to pick up their lunch tray or
Yeah.
whatever it is,
Yeah.
It's like, so they can't get away from it.
Yeah, and that's the whole thing is that's kind of part of it. I want to be able to reach the bullying aspect of it, is to be able to reach them. Because again, there's an underlying reason why they are each in different things,
Mm-hmm.
right? Where they're at, whether they're bullying. And the problem with in social media is a little bit different, right? But as far as the bullying aspect in the schools, it still goes on. Not as bad as social media. I mean, that's huge now. But it's like to be able to reach them and to spend time with them and to show them not, I mean, everybody's like, well, you don't want to take a bully and teach them martial arts. That's ridiculous. No, you don't understand the power of what we do. You know what I mean?
Right.
You can change. I guarantee you I can change that kid.
If you change his confidence, he's not going to need to bully somebody else.
Exactly.
And I think the social media is just. Sorry, I drank that whiskey and went down. We might need to pause for. No, we're good. Let's keep going.
That's good
I
whiskey.
think- yeah. This is that Conor McGregor crap. It's not very good, actually. Proper 12. It's all right. But if you want to sponsor us, we'll take you on. Kidding me? He's never going to sponsor us. But anyways,
call it crap.
Yeah. He actually might now. Yeah.
He
You
might
gotta
hand
talk a
deliver
little
that
shit.
hate mail.
Yeah. He's getting a lot of it right now too. But yeah, I think that the social media is just fuel for the fire, right? Because then when you see that person, that image is popped in your head
Yeah.
of whatever they got bullied on, and now it's even worse.
Mm-hmm.
And now you've just expanded on it because everybody knows, right?
Yeah.
Because it's a public thing.
Yeah, and it's tough because you feel now what as a victim you feel alone,
Mm-hmm.
right? And that's the other thing too is my goal, obviously, and I hate to say this, but there's groups out there I know for high school, right? Places you could call this and that, but that's not what I'm trying to reach. I'm not trying to reach them because, in my opinion, and I work with kids. We have a phenomenal kids program, and we have a few high school kids. But once you get to that level of that age, that teenage age, if you don't develop them correctly young, then it's going to go into the high school years. Right. Once you get into high school years and you're part of your peers and all that stuff, it's super hard to try to reverse them. So I'll let them deal with them. What I want the kids that are from ages 5 to 13, 14 years old or whatever. I am not putting an age on it, but that's what I'm focused on. Because you get the young kids that the dad's already left, the mom's on welfare, the kid is this, the kid doesn't have fans either, but friends, because of his status. Now, what does he feel? He's a victim, whether he's getting bullied or not. He's a victim of his emotions, because he does. And my kids are so great in the program that it's like, it doesn't matter who you are, you walk in off that
are
street.
you teaching your other kids to look out for some of these
That's
kids
part of
maybe and empower them? Like, hey,
that's part
let
of
me
the
help
ambassador
you.
program. Yeah. I want to make, in a sense, incentives or just like let them know, hey, you guys have a responsibility because you have so much power being with me for 3 or 4 years already that you have a power, a voice. Be that person. Mm-hmm. Be you don't have to wait till you're an adult to speak up. You know what I mean? Like I tell my son and daughter all the time, if you see something that's not right, you come tell me. You come tell mom. We have the three system rule. Now I homeschool my kids, but it always was you tell a teacher.
It's so hard now, like, because even the teachers need to walk on eggshells
They do.
with everything,
They do.
right?
So-
you can't
so-
even refer to somebody in the wrong way. Like,
Right. Because you're going to offend them.
right.
But you have the three system rule. My three system rule was if something's happening, something makes you uncomfortable, you go tell the teacher. If they don't do it, then you have to go to the authority figure, which is the principal, which is supposed to be, in my opinion, the parent of the entire school. Exactly. And
Or she.
He or she, right. And then the third thing is take care of it yourself. And I don't mean, obviously, I mean, my kids can take care of themselves. I mean, my daughter's 6 and she beat the crap out of a 10-year-old. But they also aren't the ones that are worried about getting picked on. Because the way they walk, they're confident. They know they can fight. They can stand up for themselves. If something bad is told to them, do you think they really worry about what's told to them?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They just kind of brush it off.
Brush it off because it's almost like if you're a victim, you're afraid that you might get beat up, right?
There's so
like
many.
That was the biggest thing for me. The fear of being bullied was like, number one, you're humiliated. But number two is like, it's a fear of like, I'm unempowered.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's my goal, is to kind of, again, reach out to those families, and not just, again, it's jiu-jitsu is what I'm about, but it's the other services we can provide. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like my wife was just talking the other day about most women, abused women, end up going back because if you cannot take them out of a bad relationship properly, then they go back. Why? Mm-hmm. Because it's like it's better to be beaten at home than being out somewhere else. Plus it's habit, right? We're all creatures of habit. But if you can take this person who is in a sense a bad situation that we know you're either going to get killed or badly injured, the kids shouldn't be around this, it's a situation where you need to be out of it, then we are going to have those services. We're going to work with other nonprofits that is going to put them in the right places to get them the help. And a lot of it is just knowledge, right?
Or even being a third party, reporting it to law enforcement isn't a bad thing. I mean,
well, that's
I
the
don't
thing.
have any issues being a rat when it comes to a man hitting a woman or a kid being abused at all, man. Not at all.
See, I wish I could be like a renegade. I think they're called renegades or vigilantes. Thank you. And not now, obviously I'm more mature, but back then I'm like, you know what? If somebody could just send me a address description, I used to go collect money, right? And
I was the same way. I got in major trouble in my life, like a major court case over something like that.
Yeah,
sexual assault.
I'm like, why can't you deputize me to go and take care of this, right?
Right. That's the natural reaction, but man, you'll just end up fucking yourself. Like the system is so fucked. I got in more trouble than the guy that actually committed the sexual assault.
Oh, sure. It sucks, right?
Yeah. Anyways, let's end it on that, Dave, man. We've been talking for 2 hours. This is awesome. We'll do this again, man. This has been a lot of fun.
And, let's do it.
I'm totally behind what you're doing with the nonprofit, and anything that I can do to help, or be there, support, or you always have a platform here.
Yeah.
So keep me posted.
Oh, I will.
I'll definitely make an announcement.
Yeah.
I'd like to link you up with some of the people that I know, some of the nonprofits that we work with. We've built some awesome relationships here in the podcast.
Love to.
And we know a ton of people in law
Even
enforcement.
Even if I could pick their brains on how to do things the right way and anything. I'm a kind of guy, if I talk to somebody, I want to learn just at least one new thing that I never knew before,
That's why I love you, man. Yeah. Cheers to that. Yeah. But before I'm sorry. Yeah, real quick. Drop the nonprofit's name
Okay.
before I forget, and the school's name and everything, your guys' website. I know you have an Instagram, all that stuff. So where people can find you.
Okay. The martial arts school is BTT Evergreen. We also have BTT Conifer, and which is Brazilian top team. We're the only 2 schools here in Colorado. The nonprofit is called Fight for Hope Foundation. We don't have a website yet, but all that is in the works. And I mean, we're working fast and hard to really launch this thing.
It's so hard to launch one of those things like a 501c3 or whatever
It is, but
It's
you know
just-
what? We've been blessed because when I started this thing, and like I said, it's been on my mind for 10 years. And then finally, I think it was the Tim Tebow book that I was reading. And one of the parts in the book was talking about when you want to conquer the world, but in your mind you can't, you don't get anywhere. But if you just start with one person, then you're going to get somewhere. And then I thought, what am I waiting on? So then I went out and I started creating this 501c3, right? And they say after you're all done, then it takes about 6 months to get your approval. And it took us 2 weeks.
Really?
And the guy that was helping me out with it was like, that's beyond incredible. That's insane. And I'm like, well, you know.
means somebody believes in what you're doing,
yeah,
right?
so-
I do too, man. So
I'm
it's
fired
awesome.
up. I can't work fast enough on this thing. You know what I mean? It's like jiu-jitsu, everything. It's just kind of like that. Just goes, you know, day by day, and it just does what it does. And I'm like, all right, now it's.
But I love the fact that you're taking it, and it's that you're truly passionate about it, and you're taking it to another level and taking it somewhere else. Because there's a million jiu-jitsu schools out there, but I think the fact that you guys are applying it in other areas and more real life situations is
Oh yeah,
commendable.
I wanna. My thing is, I wanna reach the people that can't afford it, haven't thought about it. They won't think about it because they can't afford it. All that I want that out of the way, you know. And I have so many of my members that are just waiting for me. They're just ready for me to pull the trigger, but I don't want to do it until it's done right.
Sure.
You know, so
Yeah.
I'm excited.
Well, let us know once you do get it going, and let's just have you back in. Let's do another episode just on that.
That'd be
and
great.
Hang out again, man.
Awesome.
You wanted to say something before I interrupted you and dropped all the.
Oh no, that
schools
was it. I was gonna drop the name because I'm like, I haven't said the name at all.
All right.
People are gonna be
awesome.
like, this sounds great, but what is it?
That's why I love you, brother. We're on the same page. So cheers, man. Thanks for coming in. I'm glad we finally did this, and we live like a couple miles away from each other. So
Yep.
you're welcome here anytime, man.
Awesome.
All right. Thanks everybody for listening. Gabby, you all good over there? All right. Thanks for listening to the Mountainside Podcast. If you haven't had a chance to do this already, please take a moment, follow, like, subscribe, or rate on whatever platform you catch the Mountainside Podcast at. Also, if you'd like some more information on upcoming episodes, safety tips, access to all of our affiliates, and all the badass discounts that we get here at the Mountainside Podcast, check out themountainsidepodcast.com.